stand deeper than personal national level. G7 defense ministers express support for Lebanese armed forces. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thank you for joining us. I'm Olivia Nicholas and you're watching World Today. Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim arrived in Jakarta on Saturday evening, ready to witness the swearing-in of Prabowo Subianto as Indonesia's new president today. Dato Sri Anwar's special aircraft touched down at Halim Perdana Kusuma Airport in East Jakarta at 6 p.m. local time or 7 p.m. Malaysian time. Upon arrival, he was received by the Malaysian ambassador to Indonesia, Dato Syed Muhammad Hasrin Tengku Husin, and warmly welcomed by Indonesian Investment Minister Rosan Roislani. Dato Sri Anwar was given a red carpet welcoming ceremony and received a guard of honour mounted by the Indonesian Armed Forces at the airport as the national anthems were played. He joins 20 foreign heads of state and other representatives at the inauguration to be held at the People's Consultative Assembly building. World leaders who began arriving on Friday will participate in the inauguration, during which Prabowo will be officially appointed as Indonesia's 8th president. As the winners of the 2024 presidential election, President-elect Prabowo and Vice President-elect Gibran Rakabuming Raka will succeed Joko Widodo and Maruf Amin. In another development, Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar described Malaysia and Indonesia ties as a deep extension beyond personal and bilateral ties. He also expressed hope that the continued relationship will bring greater benefits to both countries. He said this during a 4-eye meeting with Indonesia's President-elect Prabowo Subianto at the latter's residence in South Jakarta on Saturday night. Dato Anwar is undertaking a working visit here starting Saturday at the invitation of the Indonesian government to attend the inauguration ceremony of Prabowo as the 8th president of Indonesia. He also described Prabowo Subianto as a true friend and brother. The Prime Minister also took the opportunity to thank Joko Widodo, or more popularly known as Jokowi, for his service throughout his term as the 7th President of Indonesia. Dato Sri Anwar arrived in Jakarta on Saturday evening to join foreign heads of state and representatives in witnessing the swearing-in of Prabowo as Indonesia's new president on Sunday. At least 73 Palestinians, including many women and children, were killed and dozens wounded in Israeli strikes on Saturday that hit several houses in Beit Lahia town in northern Gaza Strip. Medhad Abbas, a senior health ministry official, also said that dozens were also missing in the strikes. Medics said the Israeli occupation forces targeted a multi-floor building and damaged several houses nearby. Palestinian health officials said rescue operations were being hampered by the cut-off of telecommunication and internet services for a second day. Residents and medical officials added that Israeli forces were bombing houses and besieging hospitals, preventing medical and food supplies from entering to force them to leave the camp. The Palestinian Media Office said that this is a war of genocide and ethnic cleansing, and the occupation forces have conducted a horrifying massacre in Beit Lahia. Residents and medics said Israeli forces had also tightened their siege on Jabalia, the largest of the enclave's 8 historic camps, which it encircled, by also sending tanks to the nearby towns of Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia and issuing evacuation orders to residents. Meanwhile, Israel has launched several air attacks on Beirut's southern suburbs after Hezbollah fired volleys of rockets at northern Israel, with one drone targeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's holiday home. Netanyahu's spokesperson said one of 3 drones launched from Lebanon hit Netanyahu's residence in the town of Caesarea on Saturday. The Israeli assault is the heaviest attack the Lebanese capital witnessed in more than a week. In some cases, the Israeli occupation forces gave warnings to residents to get out, but not much time in one place, just a few minutes. Damage and casualties were still being assessed, but at least one multi-story building had been completely destroyed. Lebanon's official national news agency reported 2 Israeli strikes on the same building in the neighborhood of Haret Hirik and later added that Israeli warplanes had struck the Al Umara neighborhood in nearby Shor Ifat. Hezbollah has been trading fire with Israel since October last year. The attacks on Saturday came a day after the group announced a new phase in the fighting. G7 defense ministers in a joint statement expressed support for the Lebanese armed forces in the essential and indispensable role for the protection, security and stability of Lebanon. The joint statement was released on Saturday at the end of the G7 summit. Defense ministers from Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Japan and the United States met in Naples under the Italian presidency, along with the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and Ukraine Defense Minister Rustem Umerov. The final statement, read by Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto, also stressed the firm support for Ukraine and expressed concern about the intensification of military cooperation between China and Russia, as well as the development of North Korea's nuclear program. The summit was the first session in the history of a G7 dedicated to defense in the ministerial meetings program.
È emersa l'importanza di continuare a sostenere le forze armate libanesi nel loro ruolo essenziale e irrinunciabile per la tutela, la sicurezza e la stabilità del Libano, allo scopo di rafforzarne le capacità e credibilità e legittima autorità. E proprio in questo senso la conferenza dei donatori, che come sapete noi auspichiamo, si terrà e ha avuto l'adesione da parte di tutti i paesi, anche di tutti i paesi del G7.
The involvement of North Korean troops in the Russian invasion of Ukraine would be a huge escalation risk. Ukraine's foreign minister raised the matter in a joint press conference alongside his French counterpart in Kyiv on Saturday. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky accused North Korea this week of deploying officers alongside Russia and preparing to send 10,000 soldiers to help Moscow's war effort. He said the development could pose a huge risk as it further intensifies and lets the war outgrow its current limits and territorial borders. Russia and North Korea both deny they have engaged in arms transfers. The Kremlin also dismissed South Korean assertions that North Korea may have sent some military personnel to help Russia against Ukraine. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said if it were proved true that North Korea was sending troops to support Russia in Ukraine, it would be a major escalation and would show that Moscow was struggling in the war. He added that Paris was open to the idea of an immediate invitation for Ukraine to join NATO, but that talks would continue on the subject with allies. Meanwhile, North Korea's foreign minister said a new multilateral sanctions monitoring team led by the United States was utterly unlawful and illegitimate, according to a state media report on Sunday. The United States, South Korea and Japan on Wednesday announced the launch of a new multinational team to monitor the enforcement of sanctions against North Korea after Russia and China thwarted monitoring activities at the United Nations. The team was introduced after Russia in March rejected the annual renewal of a UN panel of experts that had over the past 15 years overseen the implementation of sanctions aimed at curbing North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. China, North Korea's chief ally and economic lifeline, abstained from the vote. The forces involved in the smear campaign against the DPRK will have to pay a dear price for it. North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Son-hui said via state news agency KCNA the forces involved in the smear campaign will have to pay a dear price for it. Cho criticized the team, which would be joined by 8 other countries, as Washington's misconduct of flouting the international order and as the most undisguised violation of North Korea's sovereignty. Up next, hazardous smog shrouds parts of India ahead of winter. A man was arrested in Tokyo after throwing several suspected petrol bombs at the ruling party headquarters Saturday morning. Public broadcaster NHK said the 5 or 6 Molotov cocktail-like objects hit a riot police vehicle, but the fire was soon extinguished and no one was injured. The man, believed to be in his 40s, also tried to drive his car into the grounds of the Prime Minister's office but was blocked by a fence. He then reported trying to throw what appeared to be a smoke bomb but was stopped by police officers on the scene who detained him. The man was arrested on the spot on suspicion of obstructing public order. The motives of the perpetrator are not known. Several plastic tanks were found in the man's small white car. Japan will hold a general election on the 27th of October in a test for new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who took office after winning the LDP's leadership vote last month. Violent crime is rare in Japan, which has strict gun control laws. However, the country was shaken in 2022 by the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was shot in broad daylight on the campaign trail by a man with a makeshift gun. Ishiba's predecessor Fumio Kishida was also targeted in 2023 by a man who threw an apparent homemade pipe bomb towards the then premier, who was unharmed in the incident. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan thanked Germany's Olaf Scholz for his help in advancing a defense contract following talks in Istanbul on Saturday, although the pair remained starkly at odds over the West Asia crisis. The German Chancellor arrived for his first visit since March 2022, with tensions in West Asia high on the agenda alongside migration and other bilateral issues. Erdogan expects all political actors to take the initiative to put a stop to Israel's aggressive policies, denouncing the genocide carried out by Israel in the Palestinian territories and the attacks in Lebanon. However, Scholz said Germany did not accept the claims that there had been a genocide and insisted that Israel had a right to defend itself from attack. Turkey's relations with Germany, home to Europe's largest Turkish diaspora of 3 million people, are sensitive, and Berlin has voiced concerns over the state of human rights and democracy under Erdogan. The Israel-Hamas war has further strained ties, with Scholz and Erdogan clashing over the conflict in Berlin in November. Erdogan is a fierce critic of Israel's military campaign in Gaza and its recent push into Lebanon, but Berlin is a strong supporter of Israel. A choking haze enveloped New Delhi on Saturday as air quality nosedived into the hazardous category, leaving residents gasping with respiratory issues and eye irritation. The Indian capital's iconic monuments, buildings and roads were veiled in a strong smog, partially obscuring visibility.
ये जैसे-जैसे विंटर आ रही है तो मतलब लग रहा है पॉल्यूशन बढ़ता जा रहा है। फिर अभी दिवाली आ जाएगी कुछ दिनों में, फिर उसकी वजह से और पॉल्यूशन हो जाएगा, फिर दिक्कत और बढ़ जाएगी। ये सरकार को इस चीज़ पे थोड़ा गौर करना चाहिए।
Switzerland-based air quality watchdog IQ Air showed the air quality index in the region as 369 on Saturday, putting the pollution levels in the hazardous category. The hazardous air quality in New Delhi is further exacerbated by the burning of crop residues by farmers in neighboring states, including Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. New Delhi was rated the world's most polluted capital last year by IQ Air. Cuba suffered a second nationwide blackout on Saturday, hours after officials said power was being slowly restored. Saturday's blackout follows an island-wide shutdown of Cuba's electrical grid on Friday after one of the island's major power plants failed. Previously, Cuban officials said small pockets of power had been restored across the island, although there were no immediate numbers provided of how many people had their service reconnected. Some Cubans complained on social media that their power briefly returned before flickering out. The blackouts threatened to plunge the nation into a deeper crisis, as without power people would also not have running water and refrigerated food would quickly begin to spoil. Millions of people have been left without power over the last several days as the aging Cuban electrical grid repeatedly collapsed. Cuban officials have blamed a confluence of events, from increased U.S. economic sanctions to disruptions caused by recent hurricanes and the improvised state of the island's infrastructure. The country's health minister, Jose Angel Portal Miranda, said the country's health facilities were running on generators and that health workers continued to provide vital services. An Italian Coast Guard vessel collected migrants held in reception centres in Albania on Saturday to transfer them to Italy after a court ruling dealt a blow to Rome's plans to house migrants picked up at sea outside the European Union. The migrants were taken to Albania early this week by an Italian Navy ship. They originally numbered 16, but 4 had already been brought to Italy for health reasons or because they were minors. The court said the 12 migrants in the new Albanian facility of Jadar had to return to Italy because their countries of origin, Egypt and Bangladesh, could not be considered safe. The Italian government vowed on Friday to push ahead with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's flagship project to divert asylum seekers abroad, saying it would appeal against the legal decision that migrants in reception centres in Albania should be taken to Italy. A cabinet meeting will be held on Monday to decide on the government's response. Coming up, Qatar returns to winning ways with surprise victory over Terengganu. A late goal from PDRM FC substitute Aremu Timothy Oluwason dashed Selangor FC's hopes of securing 3 points, ending their Super League clash at the Selayang Municipal Council MPS Stadium in a 1-1 draw last night. The result also halted the Red Giants' impressive momentum as they had won 4 consecutive league matches prior to this. The visitors took the lead in the 16th minute when import striker Alvin Fortes headed in the opening goal. Despite creating several chances to extend their lead, the 1-0 scoreline held until the break. In the second half, Selangor continued to dominate possession but failed to capitalize on their opportunities. The defensive lapse in the dying moments allowed Oluwaseun to pounce on an opening and net the equalizer in stoppage time. The draw hindered Selangor's mission to close the gap on league leaders Johor Darul Tazim JDT, with Selangor now on 26 points, 5 behind JDT. Meanwhile, Qatar Darul Aman FC returned to winning ways after 5 matches, pulling off a surprise 1-0 victory over third-place Terengganu FC at the Darul Aman Stadium in Alustar. The winning goal for Muhammad Nafuzi Zain's side came in the dying seconds of first-half stoppage time, with Jose Clayton heading in a free kick from Sonny Hunorde, which Terengganu goalkeeper Muhammad Suhaimi Hussein failed to save. While the team continued their plight with salary arrears, it was a sight for sore eyes as head coach Nafuzi Zain praised his players for showing professionalism on the pitch despite the off-field issues. Nafuzi was put in tough situations lately as the senior players in the team decided to boycott training sessions as they had not been paid for several months, forcing the under-23 team to take on Kuala Lumpur, where they were trashed 5-0 at the Chera Stadium last month. Barcelona midfielder Gavi will be part of the La Liga leaders squad to face Sevilla tomorrow after a long injury layoff, coach Hansi Flick confirmed on Saturday. The 20-year-old has been absent since suffering a severe knee injury playing for Spain in November 2023 and missing his country's Euro 2024 triumph this summer. The tenacious midfielder burst into Barcelona's first team in the 2021-2022 season and became Spain's youngest ever player at 17, but was soon usurped by teammate Lamine Yamal. Barcelona will also be boosted by the return of Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez after their recent injuries, while Flick confirmed teenage star Yamal is fit after a minor hamstring issue. Flick said Dutch midfielder Frankie de Jong, who also recently made his comeback from an ankle injury, felt discomfort in training and was a doubt for the game tomorrow at the club's temporary Olympic Stadium home. Barcelona still have several players out injured, including Ronald Araujo, Ferran Torres and Andreas Christensen. World Championship leader Jorge Martin of Pramac Racing put an impressive performance on Saturday to take pole position ahead of 6-time MotoGP champion Marc Marquez in qualifying ahead of Sunday's Australian Grand Prix. Martin secured his third consecutive pole at Phillip Island and sixth of the season with a stunning time of 1 minute 27.296, almost 6/10 of a second clear of Gresini's Marc Marquez, who had dominated the practice sessions. Aprilia's Maverick Vinales was third quickest, clocking 1 minute 27.991 to complete an all-Spanish front row, and Macro Besecchi of VR46 Racing was fourth. Two-time MotoGP champion Francesco Bagnaia of Ducati, who trails Martin by 10 points in the championship standings, finished fifth after a slow tyre change delayed his second run. Earlier, Martin led from lap 1 to the checkered flag to win the Australian Motorcycle Grand Prix sprint, stretching his World Championship lead over Bagnaia. Sebastian Ogier holds a narrow lead heading into the final day of the Central European Rally after a tight tussle with OTT Tanak on Saturday. Toyota's Ogier leads the Estonian in his Hyundai by 5.2 seconds, with 4 stages to come on Sunday. The overnight leader Thierry Neuville suffered a major setback in stage 11, the third of the day, when he spun his Hyundai 120N and a minute later went off the road altogether and got stuck in a ditch, which cost the Belgian nearly 40 seconds, which knocked him out of the lead and down into fourth position overall. Neuville, hoping to claim his long-awaited maiden WRC title, needs to outscore Tanak by 2 points. However, he faces a 39.8 second deficit and may have to put off his objective until Rally Japan. Evelyn Evans is third, 14 seconds off the pace, while championship leader Thierry Neuville is fourth, nearly 40 seconds behind after a difficult morning. The Belgian started the day in the lead but dropped down the standings after spinning twice in an earlier stage. 4 stages and 54 kilometers await in the races on Sunday. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 begs the question, who can you trust? Zombies surprised passengers aboard a running bullet train on Saturday in an event the organizers boasted as the world's first haunted house staging on Japan's high-speed railway network. The roughly 140-minute ride, which came with a price tag from 33,000 yen or around $220 to 55,000 yen or around $367, connected the country's capital Tokyo and Osaka, home to Universal Studios Japan, which is currently organizing Halloween-themed events with zombies. During the ride, a crew of ghouls entertained 40 passengers with magic and other performances.
At first, I felt a little nervous because I have like a love-hate relationship with being scared. I didn't know how bad it was going to be. I get a little anxiety. But honestly, as soon as I got in, I saw just how happy everyone was. Like, I feed off of energy, and everyone's energy was really positive and happy. So immediately when I got on, those nerves kind of faded away. And then by the end, I didn't want it to end. So it was enjoyable from the beginning to the end.
The event organizer said that it hoped to run a similar ride next year for Halloween, but with Japanese yokai monsters. Black Ops 6, the highly anticipated 2024 edition of the famous first-person shooter video game Call of Duty, will be released on the 25th of October. Ahead of its distribution worldwide, journalist in London takes a sneak peek at the game with Stephanie Snowden from the Call of Duty studios, explaining that the game, set in 1991, is based around the question, who can you trust, and inspired by the moments in history.
So not a political message at all in the game. We're an entertainment product. We are fictional, the game's entirely fictional. I would say that Black Ops 6 is inspired by moments in history. And so we kind of like to take that. I talked a little bit about signature Black Ops experience in the presentation. It's almost asking like well, what if this happened? Like an alternative history, or maybe we story tell something that was happening in the underbelly politically as we look back.
Black Ops 6 brings the franchise to an all-new era of warfare. It's 1991, the Cold War is over and the Gulf War is raging on, with the US now the globe's sole superpower. The development team has gone to great lengths to ensure equipment and weapons depicted in the game are authentic to early 90s armaments. Lots of fan-favorite characters are returning, including Frank Woods and Russell Adler. From Romantasy to Dark College, legions of young readers are diving into eclectic new literary subgenres in a trend turbocharged by social media. At Frankfurt Book Fair this week, fans flocked to colourful stands showcasing new adult literature that filled an 8,000 square metre hall. The trend has been fueled by authors and publishers posting on social media and readers giving feedback, particularly under the hashtag BookTok on TikTok.
New adult has been hot now for 2 years or so, but people have been writing and reading it for a lot longer. It just didn't have a name. It's just like, why? I really don't know, but it's working, and we have so many younger readers who now buy and read books who maybe otherwise wouldn't, so I love it.
New adult literature is generally aimed at readers aged 18 to 25 and usually contains more mature themes such as drug use that could be considered off limits for younger audiences. Some authors have taken on a near rock star status with legions of fans who would queue for hours at events to meet them and get autographs.
Melaksanakan misi, mempertahan maruah, mencipta secara setia, pertemuan takkan jenta dengan asalkan membuat peluang menentukan satu perjuangan, satu suara akan demi rencana di dada, memburu takkan keaduan, kekuatan bicara.
That concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, Malaysia-Indonesia ties extend deeper than personal national level. Till then, I'm Olivia Nicholas. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.